Hi, I'm Setsuko, and welcome to my beginner's healing guide for the Restoration Shaman in World of Warcraft Battle for Azeroth. In this video, we're going to deep dive into each of the spells in our spellbook, talk about what they do and how they work together. Then we're going to take a look at our core rotation, all the abilities we're going to use over and over again in every fight. And then finally, we're going to cap things off by creating a passive talent build that's going to let you practice the core fundamentals of the class in a dungeon without adding additional layers of complexity that you need to keep track of. You can find timestamps to the different parts of the guide in the description below, as well as a link to a copy of the talent build we're going to be using, and any other additional resources that I think will help you out. As we get into the spellbook, keep in mind that I'm not going to be going over any spells that we're getting from talents. We're going to cover those later when we get into our actual talent build. What we're going to focus on now is the spells that you're going to have all the time, regardless of what talent build you have. Also, as I go over each spell, I'm going to be placing it down onto the action bar in a particular area. I'll explain those areas when I place the first spell into that particular area. Okay, we're ready to go. The first ability we have is Ancestral Spirit. This has an 800 mana cost, 40 yard range, and a 9-second cast time. This is our out of combat resurrection spell. It returns the spirit to the body, restoring a dead target to life with 35% mana and 35% health. This cannot be cast in combat. I like to take these out of combat spells that I'm not going to be using in the heat of battle, or utility type spells that also don't get used in combat very often, and put those over here on my right side bar and just keep those in this area. The next spell we have is Ancestral Vision. This has an 800 mana cost, 100 yard range, and a 9-second cast. This is our mass out of combat resurrection spell. So this will return all dead party members back to life with 35% of their maximum health and mana. We're going to put that over here as well. And next we have Astral Recall. This has a 9-second cast time and a 10-minute cooldown. And basically when you use this, it acts as another Hearthstone. It'll yank you through the Twisting Nether back to wherever your Hearthstone is set to. And you can speak to an innkeeper to change that. It changes with your Hearthstone as well. So we're going to put this over here on this section too. Next up, we have Astral Shift. This is an instant cast ability with a 1.5 minute cooldown. You shift partially into the elemental planes, taking 40% less damage for 8 seconds. This is a defensive ability that we have access to with a fairly low cooldown. At a minute and a half, you're going to be able to use this on every major fight in a dungeon and about every other fight or so on a dungeon, depending on the speed of your group. I like to take any of my defensive abilities that aren't part of my core rotation and put those down here on the short section on the right of my main action bar, and I'll just kind of line up all the defensive abilities here. Our next ability is going to be Capacitator Totem. This has a 2000 mana cost, 40 yard range, is instant cast with a 1 minute cooldown. It summons a totem at the target location that gathers electrical energy from the surrounding air and explodes after 2 seconds, stunning all enemies within 8 yards for 3 seconds. So this is a crowd control ability. I like to place these right above the defensive tools that I have on my action bar. Now with this Capacitator Totem, this is an AoE stun, and you can use it fairly often with a 1 minute cooldown, and this can often make a big difference when you're in combat. Throwing this Capacitator Totem out there near your tank where it's going to stun the majority of the enemies that you're fighting against gives you an opportunity to top off people that need healing while that stun's in effect, and also gives your damage dealers a chance to really dump some damage onto those enemies while they don't have to worry about retaliation or any of the kind of like status effects that are going to be in that area. So this is a really great ability to use. Use it as often as you can. Our next ability is Chain Heal. This is a 5000 mana cost ability with a 40 yard range and a 2.2 second cast. It might be a little different for you. The cast times will vary based on the amount of haste that your character has. But this says it heals the friendly target for a pretty good amount of health, then jumps to the 3 most injured nearby allies. Healing is reduced by 30% with each jump. So this is part of our core rotation, and I like to put these abilities down here on the main section of my action bar where I'm going to be hotkeying and using these abilities all the time. With Chain Heal, this is an ability that allows us to heal multiple targets, but you still have to pay attention to who you're targeting first, because the first person that you target is going to get the biggest heal, and then it kind of auto jumps to other injured allies nearby, and every time it jumps, the amount that is healed is reduced every time. So you can't really just throw it out there and go, I'm healing everyone. No, you still need to target the right character, the person that you're wanting to heal the most, and make sure they get that first primary chain heal, and then everything else is kind of a nice bonus. Our next ability is Chain Lightning. This is a 200 mana cost ability with a 40-yard range and a 1.8 second cast. It hurls a lightning bolt at an enemy, dealing a small amount of nature damage, and then jumping to additional nearby targets. This can affect 3 targets in total. It does the same amount of damage to each one, and every strike has a chance to crit. So this is a AoE damage dealing ability, and for the Restoration Shaman, it's kind of a utility ability, because when you're not healing and you have the opportunity to deal some damage, you're kind of filling a utility role, because you're supposed to be healing whenever healing is needed, so this is kind of like a side job that you do. I like to take my utility abilities and put them above my main action bar abilities. Our next ability is Earth Elemental. This is an instant cast ability with a 5-minute cooldown. It calls forth a greater Earth Elemental to protect you and your allies for 1 minute. This is a defensive ability with a long cooldown, so I put that down here, and I try to put my lower cooldown abilities towards the left and my higher cooldown abilities towards the right in this general area. The Earth Elemental will come out, and it has a pretty good amount of health, and it will actually taunt enemies for you. So this is a really good ability to use if, for example, your tank goes down or you need kind of like an off tank for a particular situation. The thing to keep in mind with the Earth Elemental is it will not taunt boss enemies. So if you throw it out during a boss fight, you're really just kind of wasting the cooldown. It'll run over and smack the boss a few times, but it won't actually help you defensively. So the place you really want to use this is when you pull an extra pack of enemies that you shouldn't have, or the tank goes down, then you could throw out your Earth Elemental to kind of help and make sure that at least you have kind of 2 aggro units out there trying to soak up some of that threat from the enemies, so that your damage dealers and you as the healer don't take the heat from all the extra enemies. Our next ability is going to be Earthbind Totem. This is a 500 mana cost ability with a 40-yard range, instant cast with a 30-second cooldown. It summons an Earth Totem with a low amount of health at the target location for 20 seconds that slows the movement speed of enemies within 10 yards. This is a crowd control ability, so we're going to put that down here. Now, this ability is really good in certain mythic content, depending on the enemies that you're fighting and the affixes that they have, but it's also just generally good for running away from stuff. If you get into a bad situation or a wipe and you're trying to recover, you can run away and toss Earthbind Totem out in front of you, run through it, and then that's going to slow the enemies down behind you, and that might just be enough to help you get away. Next up, we have Farsight. This is an unlimited range ability with a 1.8 second cast. It changes your viewpoint to the targeted location for 1 minute. This is just kind of a fun ability. You're not going to be using this in combat. You can use it to scout around or just look at stuff. So we're going to put that over here with our other out of combat style abilities. Next, we have Flame Shock. This is a 3,000 mana cost ability with a 40-yard range. It's instant cast with a 6-second cooldown. It sears the target with fire, causing a decent amount of fire damage, and then an additional large amount of fire damage over 21 seconds. So it does an initial small little burst of damage, and then a long damage over time. Now, this is part of our damage dealing utility kit, and we're going to talk about the synergies it has with other abilities later on. Next up is Ghost Wolf. This is an instant cast ability. It turns you into a Ghost Wolf, increasing your movement speed by 30% and preventing your movement speed from being reduced below 100%. This is a utility movement ability, so we're going to put that down here on our bar. Normally, if we didn't have an additional DPS rotation that we were going to be messing with, I would put that all the way over here to the left, but we're going to leave a little room for some more damage dealing abilities here first. Now, Ghost Wolf is an ability that is not broken by combat or anything like that, so you can get hit when you're in this form and you can continue to stay in it. This is really great for running away. It's also usable indoors, so this is a great way to keep up with your party as you're moving through the dungeons. It's just an all-around really good useful movement utility ability. Our next ability is Healing Rain. It's a 4,320 mana cost ability with a 40-yard range, 1.8 second cast time, and a 10-second cooldown. This blankets the target area in a healing rain, restoring a decent amount of health to up to 6 allies over 10 seconds. This is part of our core rotation. It's a nice AoE heal that we can just cast out and then forget about, because it's going to do its healing in that area. We don't have to worry about maintaining it. The next ability is Healing Stream Totem. This is a 2,200 mana cost ability, instant cast with a 30-second cooldown. It summons a totem at your feet for 15 seconds that heals an injured party or raid member within 40 yards for a very small amount every 1.8 seconds. This is part of our core rotation. We're going to put this down here, and this is another way for us to not necessarily set up an AoE heal, but place another sort of set it and forget it heal. Next up, we have Healing Surge. This is a 3,600 mana cost ability with a 40-yard range and a 1.3-second cast time. It's a quick surge of healing energy that restores a large amount of a friendly target's health. This is part of our core rotation. This is our fast, expensive, high healing spell that we're going to be using on a single target. Next, we have Healing Tide Totem. This is a 1,120 mana cost ability. It's instant cast with a 3-minute cooldown. This summons a totem at your feet for 10 seconds, which pulses every 1.8 seconds, healing all party or raid members within 40 yards for a very small amount. Now, this is a longer cooldown ability, and it's what I would consider an offensive healing ability. I kind of think of offense and defense as proactive and reactive. Anything that helps me perform my role better is something that I consider to be proactive or offensive, and anything that is kind of just helping me survive and help other people do the same is something I consider to be defensive or reactive. And so when it comes to healers, I think of the offensive abilities as the ones that help me do my healing job even better. And this is one of those. And so I like to take these types of abilities and place them here on the far end of my main action bar. Kind of give them a little separation between the defensive stuff and know that, hey, this is the stuff I hit when I'm in trouble. This is the stuff when I want to do what I'm supposed to do even better. And Healing Tide Totem is a really powerful cooldown that we can use. It heals everyone, all party and raid members within 40 yards. It's going to heal them constantly over that 10 seconds. So this is a big ability that we want to use when everybody needs to be healed. Next up, we have Healing Wave. This is a 1,800 mana cost ability with a 40-yard range and a 2.2-second cast time. It's an efficient wave of healing energy that restores a large amount of a friendly target's health. This is part of our core rotation, and it is our cheap, slow, high healing ability that we're going to be using on single targets. Our next ability is Heroism. This is a 4,300 mana cost ability, instant cast with a 5-minute cooldown. This increases haste by 30% for all party and raid members for 40 seconds. Allies receiving this effect will become exhausted and unable to benefit from Heroism or Time Warp, which is a mage spell, again for 10 minutes. Now, this could be seen as a potentially offensive ability because it will help you heal faster because of the haste, but generally you're not going to be using this to help you perform your job better. You're going to be using this to help everyone perform their job better because this will grant haste to your damage dealers and your tanks as well. So I look at this more as a utility ability that you're going to use whenever it's of most benefit to everyone in the party. Next up, we have Hex. This is a 30-yard range ability with a 1.5-second cast and a 30-second cooldown. This transforms the enemy into a frog for 1 minute. While hexed, the victim is incapacitated and cannot attack or cast spells. Damage may cancel the effect. You're limited to one target hexed at a time, and it only works on humanoids and beasts. This is a crowd control ability. You're going to use this sometimes when you want to isolate a particular enemy from the rest of the group, or if you're in difficult content and you're trying to get as much CC down as possible so that you can pull just a couple enemies at a time. Generally, the best time to use Hex is going to be before the tank pulls, so that you hex something, the tank pulls everything else, you kill all that stuff, then you can take the Hex target and just kill it all by itself. Our next ability is Lava Burst. This is a 1,200 mana cost ability with a 40-yard range. It has a 1.8-second cast time and an 8-second cooldown. This hurls molten lava at the target, dealing an okay amount of fire damage. Lava Burst will always critically strike if the target is affected by Flame Shock. So this is part of our little DPS utility rotation. This is also where we get a little bit of synergy with Flame Shock. You're going to want to always have Flame Shock on a target and then use Lava Burst so that you get those guaranteed critical hits from that. Continuing on with the trend of damage dealing utility abilities, we have Lightning Bolt, which has a 40-yard range and a 1.8-second cast time. This hurls a bolt of lightning at the target, doing an okay amount of nature damage as well. So this is going to go down here. Now you'll notice that Lightning Bolt has the same range, same cast time as Lava Burst, and actually does a little bit more damage. That said, Lava Burst costs mana and has a cooldown. Well, the reason for this is because Lava Burst has that clause in there where it can guarantee critically strike if a target's affected by Flame Shock, and Flame Shock is something you can totally control. So you're basically always going to be critting with Lava Burst. There's some other synergies here too that we're going to talk about a little bit later. Alright, our next ability is Purge. This is a 1600 mana cost ability with a 30-yard range. It's instant cast, and it purges the enemy target, removing one beneficial magic effect. Now, this is an ability that you're probably not going to be using all that often just as you're trying to learn, but as you become familiar with dungeons and the various enemies, and as your party members start to call things out, this is something you will start to incorporate into your build, especially on higher difficulty content. So we're going to put this down here by Heroism as kind of a utility ability that we may not use all the time in the beginning, but we do want to know that it's there. We want to know that we can use it and start incorporating it in as we get more comfortable with the rest of the stuff we're doing as a Restoration Shaman. Our next ability is Purify Spirit. This is a 1300 mana cost ability with a 40-yard range. It's instant cast with an 8-second cooldown, and this removes all curse and magic effects from a friendly target. So it's kind of like a reverse purge. Instead of removing a good thing from an enemy, you're removing a bad thing from one of your friends. And this is something that you are going to be doing all the time as a healer. You're going to be paying attention to those health bars and seeing those debuffs and things pop up, and you're going to want to purify those, especially off the tank or other important members within your party, as often as you can. So we're going to put this down here by Ghost Wolf as one of the abilities we want to definitely make sure that we start trying to incorporate into what we're doing right away. Next up, we have Riptide. This is a 1600 mana cost ability with a 40-yard range. It's instant cast with a 6-second cooldown. It says restorative waters wash over a friendly target, healing them for a decent amount and then an even greater amount over the next 18 seconds. This is part of our core rotation. This is an ability that is going to do a nice little bit of heal up front and then add a nice heal over time effect to the person that we healed as well. There are also a lot of synergies with Riptide that we're going to talk about later. Next, we have Spirit Link Totem. This is a 2200 mana cost ability with a 40-yard range. It's instant cast with a 3-minute cooldown. It says it summons a totem at the target location for 6 seconds, which reduces damage taken by all party and raid members within 10 yards by 10%. So let's stop right there. So first off, we have a 3-minute cooldown, so a longer cooldown here, and then we have damage reduction for all party and raid members. That already tells me, hey, this is probably one of those long defensive abilities that's going to go over here by our Earth Elemental. But let's continue on. It says every 1 second, the health of all affected players is redistributed, such that all players are at the same percentage of maximum health. So what does this mean? It means that if you're in a dungeon with a group of 5 people and you're all within range of this totem, and your tank is at 50% health, and everyone else is at 100% health, when this thing pulses, it's going to redistribute that missing health across all the party members. So it's going to take that 50% and it's going to take 10% off of everyone. So for the 4 people that were at 100%, it's actively going to remove 10% of your health. But it's going to do that to give that 40% to the tank so that when this thing pulses, everyone in the party will be at 90% health. So this is constantly going to redistribute that missing health. This helps to prevent large damage spikes from actually putting people into positions where they might actually die, because if everybody's at 100%, somebody takes, 50% damage, and then this thing pulses, everyone's going to be at 90% health instead of having that one person who's down at 50 and like almost ready to die. This is a really powerful effect. It doesn't necessarily like save the day in terms of actively healing people up to 100% of their health, but it can definitely make your job as a healer a lot easier by redistributing that health, letting you get into some of your powerful multi-target heals to kind of help top that off. And it has this nice 10% damage reduction on top of everything else. So really strong ability that we are going to put down here by our Earth Elemental. Our next ability is Spirit Walker's Grace. This is a 2,820 mana cost ability, instant cast with a 2-minute cooldown. It calls upon the guidance of the spirits for 15 seconds, permitting movement while casting shaman spells. This is also castable while casting. This is a utility movement ability that we're going to put down here next to Ghost Wolf. This is an ability that's going to allow you to move around and cast your healing spells in those situations where maybe there's a lot of AoE stuff going on. You need to constantly keep moving. This is the ability that you're going to use in those situations to make sure that you can keep doing your job effectively, even though you have to move. Next, we have Trimmer Totem. This is a 460 mana cost ability, instant cast with a 1-minute cooldown. It summons an Earth Totem with 5 health at the feet of the caster that shakes the ground around it for 10 seconds, removing fear, charm, and sleep effects from party and raid members within 30 yards. Now, this is a utility ability that you're probably not going to use super often, but you're going to know when you're in a dungeon, when you're near an enemy that is going to be casting these effects, and that's when you're going to want to use the Trimmer Totem. The Trimmer Totem is really good for counteracting those abilities, and a lot of times those abilities, especially fear, is the one that is going to cause your party to go all over the place, aggro extra groups of enemies that you don't want to deal with and that could possibly cause a wipe. So knowing when to use Trimmer Totem is really important as you get into higher difficulty content. It's kind of the same as Purge, where it's not something you may not start using right away, but as you start to run the same dungeons over and over again, you'll learn where Trimmer Totem is going to be the most effective. Next, we have Water Walking. This is a 30-yard range ability. It's instant cast. This allows a friendly target to walk across water for 10 minutes. Any damage taken will cancel the effect. This is a nice out-of-combat ability that you can use for utility. This is going to help you when you're traveling. You can use it while you're mounted. You can cast it on other party members. But this is not something you're going to be using in combat, because as soon as you take any amount of damage at all, period, the water walking's over. So this is something we're going to throw over there on the right-hand side with all of our other out-of-combat abilities. And our final active ability that we have is Wind Shear. This is a 30-yard range, instant cast, 12-second cooldown ability. It disrupts the target's concentration with a burst of wind, interrupting spell casting and preventing any spell in that school from being cast for 3 seconds. So this is our interrupt. Most classes have one. We're going to put this down here with our crowd control abilities, and you're going to use that anytime you want to stop someone from casting a powerful ability. Alright, before we move on, we're going to talk about the passive abilities that we have in our spellbook and how those are going to affect the other spells that we have. First up, we have Lava Surge. This says your flame shock damage over time has a 20% chance to reset the remaining cooldown on Lava Burst and cause your next Lava Burst to be instant. So what this means is we've got a little bit of extra synergy here with our damage dealing abilities. Now you're going to put out that flame shock. That's going to cause your Lava Burst to always be critical, so you cast your Lava Burst, and then as that flame shock damage is ticking away, there's a 20% chance every time it does that it's going to reset the cooldown on Lava Burst and make it an instant cast ability. That's going to guarantee crit because you have Flame Shock on that target. So these are all the reasons why that synergy makes sense and why Lava Burst has a cooldown and a mana cost and Lightning Bolt doesn't. Next, we have our Mastery. The numbers here are going to change based on how much Mastery you have, but this is Deep Healing. It increases healing from your spells by, in my case, 53%, based on the current health of your target. Lower health targets are healed for more. So this is just a nice bonus effect. In those situations where someone's low on health, we're going to heal them better because of Deep Healing. It's a really cool passive to have. Next, we have Reincarnation. This allows you to resurrect yourself upon death with 20% health and mana. This effect can only occur once every 30 minutes. So this is a really awesome effect that is going to let you come back from death in the middle of a fight if you really need to, or at the end of the fight after everyone wipes so that you can res everyone and not everybody has to walk back. But it's a really cool effect, really cool ability. But the thing that I will say is before you hit the button to reincarnate, make sure it's worth it. Make sure that you coming back into the fight is actually going to change the tide of battle, because if that's not the case, then you're going to hit that button, you're going to die again right away, and then 10 minutes later, you're going to wish that you had saved Reincarnate for a situation where you could actually make a difference. So always take a second, take stock of the situation, and see, am I going to make a difference if I reincarnate here? Don't worry about what everyone's yelling at you in the chat. You take a look at the situation and go, can I make a difference? If the answer is yes, come back in. If you think you're just going to die again, save it. Next, we have Resurgence. This says your direct heal criticals refund a percentage of your maximum mana. You get 1% back for Healing Wave, 0.6% back from Healing Surge, Unleash Life, or Riptide, and 0.25% back from Chain Heal. So in this case, we have to have the mana to cast these abilities, but we get some of that mana back, and this is just going to help keep us from going or out of mana too soon. And next up, we have Tidal Waves. This is the most complex of our passive abilities, and this is where some of the synergies come in with Riptide that I mentioned earlier, also with Chain Heal here. It says casting Chain Heal or Riptide reduces the cast time of your next healing wave by 30%, or increases the critical effect chance of your next healing surge by 40%. And this can stack up to 2 times. So basically what happens here is you're going to be casting Chain Heal when you want to heal multiple targets, and then you're probably going to be casting Riptide on single targets depending on the situation. When you do that, you're going to get a stack of Tidal Waves, and then it's up to you to decide, do you want to cast a Healing Wave or a Healing Surge with the buff from Tidal Waves. It's not random, it's entirely up to you. This will stack up to 2 times, so you don't have to weave back and forth exactly. You don't have to, Chain Heal, Healing Wave, Riptide, Healing Surge. You don't have to go back and forth like that. But what you don't want to do is you don't want to get 2 stacks of Riptide and then not cast Healing Wave or Healing Surge, because then if you were to cast Chain Heal or Riptide again, you would generate a 3rd stack, which you can't actually do, so you've wasted the benefit from Tidal Waves when you do that. So you kind of want to make sure if you hit 2 stacks of Tidal Waves, that before you cast another Chain Heal or another Riptide, you go ahead and cast a Healing Wave or Healing Surge. Now, in this case, remember that Healing Wave is our low-cost, high-cast time, high healing ability. It's our efficient, slow healing skill for a single target. When we have Tidal Waves, this is going to reduce the cast time by 30%. So this turns it into a cheap, quick, high healing heal, which is awesome. That's everything that we want. Is we want it to be cheap, we want it to be fast, and we want it to heal a lot. And that's what Tidal Waves will do for Healing Wave. Now in the case of Healing Surge is our expensive, fast, high healing ability. So what Tidal Waves does for Healing Surge is it increases the critical effect chance by 40%. So it's still going to cost a good amount of mana. It's still going to be fast, but now it has the chance to really heal for a lot. So based on the situation, it's up to you to decide, do I want to cast Healing Wave quickly and keep conserving my mana, or do I want to cast Healing Surge, hopefully get that critical hit and just do a massive amount of healing, even though it's going to consume a fair amount of my mana. And that's it. Those are the spells. I'm going to rearrange some things on my action bar here, which you might see in the next little clip, but then we're going to move on and talk about our core rotation. All right, before we get into the healing rotation, I'm going to go over the damage dealing rotation here really quickly. It's not going to take very long, and you do want to use this as much as possible. If you don't need to heal, you should be dealing damage. So this is really simple. We kind of already covered it. You're going to pick your target. You're going to cast Flame Shock to go ahead and get that Flame Shock buff up there. Then you want to cast Lava Burst. This is going to get you that guaranteed critical strike. And then after that, if you're targeting a single target, you're going to cast Lightning Bolt. If you're targeting multiple targets, you're going to cast Chain Lightning. Now, this is the proc that you can get from our passive ability Lava Surge that resets the cooldown on Lava Burst and makes it an instant cast ability. So anytime that pops up, you're going to cast that on your primary target, and then you're just going to cycle back through. Always make sure you have Flame Shock up on your primary target and some of your secondary ones. If you want to do a little multi-dotting there, you can do that. You're going to cast your Lava Burst, go into your single target or multi-target, and then if we happen to get a proc here for Lava Burst, then we'll cast that again. If we don't, when it's off cooldown, we want to go ahead and cast that because we get the guaranteed critical again. And there we go. We got a proc here again. Go back into Lightning Bolt. And you can see it's really simple. It's 4 abilities. It's really 3 depending on whether you're single target or multi-target. So not that hard to maintain. All right, now that we've talked about our damage dealing rotation, let's get into the healing core rotation here. This is where we're going to cover these abilities right here. And we kind of talked about these a little bit already when we went over the spells, but we're going to kind of see in some different situations where we want to use these. So most of the time, what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to open up with Riptide when you're healing. And you're going to be putting this on the tank. Primarily when you start out, hopefully it's the tank taking the majority of the damage and not anyone else. So you will pick the tank and you'll go ahead and you'll cast Riptide. This is going to do an initial instant cast burst heal, and then it's going to place Riptide, the heal over time, on them as well. After you've done that, it's up to you based on the situation what you want to do from there. Now, oftentimes it's a good idea to go ahead and throw out a healing rain wherever your tank is, because then that's going to get some auto healing going there. You can jump back into your Riptide whenever that falls off the tank. But at this point, if it's the tank that you're mainly wanting to heal, then you're going to use either Healing Surge or Healing Wave, depending on how quickly they're taking damage. If it's a controlled fight and you feel like you're doing pretty well, then the best option is to use your Healing Wave, because that's going to conserve your mana, and you're just going to use this to keep the tank topped up in conjunction with your Riptide. If the tank is taking damage really fast and you really need to pump out some heals, then you can use Healing Surge to get that quicker, faster heal off and get them topped up even better. Ideally, what you want to do is have that Riptide, throw out your Healing Rain to help out your party members, and then just go into Healing Wave to heal the tank. Now, if you're needing to heal multiple people in the party and you want to keep healing the tank, that's where you would go in and you would cast your Chain Heal. And now you cast that out and it bounces between multiple targets. Like we said, the primary target, hopefully the tank, is the one who's going to get the biggest heal, and then it's going to jump, and that heal is going to decrease on each jump and heal other members of your party. Now, the other thing that you can do if it's a fight that's going to go on pretty long, maybe a boss fight, or if you need some additional healing, is you could drop out your Healing Stream Totem. That just drops right next to you, and that's going to start healing people over time as well. So, with all that said, that kind of gives you an idea of the basic core rotation, but the thing that we need to talk about now is our passive tidal waves. So, in this situation, if I were to cast Riptide, you're going to see I have tidal waves here, so now I can decide, do I want to cast Healing Waves, or do I want to cast Healing Surge? Now, generally speaking, if you're healing the tank, then you can go ahead and use that Healing Wave, and this is going to consume that tidal waves. So, if we go ahead, we do Riptide into Healing Wave, you're going to see this go away, and it made our Healing Wave take less time to cast. Now, same thing here if you were to do, I'm going to switch targets just so they don't get annoyed. If you were to do Riptide over here and then your Healing Surge, you have a higher chance to get a critical hit on that. You're not guaranteed, it's not 100% critical hit chance, but it is a higher critical hit chance there. Now, if you're focused on healing multiple targets, you can go straight into Chain Heal, skip the Riptide. Ideally, you do want to put Riptide out on someone, but going straight into Chain Heal in those situations where you need to heal multiple targets is still going to get you that stack of tidal waves, and then you can decide whether you want to use Healing Wave or Healing Surge on that. So ideally, your single target kind of opening rotation is going to go Riptide. You're going to have the tidal waves buff. You're going to cast hopefully Healing Wave to conserve a little bit of mana. By that time, Riptide is going to be off cooldown, so you could pick a different target because your current target should still have the heal over time. You get your tidal waves. You go back over to the tank, you're going to hit Healing Wave again, and just kind of repeat this process, switching to Healing Surge if you need a really quick heal. In an AoE healing situation, then what you're going to want to do is go straight into Chain Heal, if you can, to get everybody kind of on board, heal your primary target. You can switch to a secondary target and throw out a Riptide on them, and then go into Chain Heal. You can also do the Riptide first. It's instant cast, so just kind of fit it in wherever it makes the most sense. And then also, in both these situations, keep in mind that you do have Healing Wave that you can put out, and you have Healing Stream Totem that you can drop. Now, that's basically what you're going to want to do when it comes to your core rotation of healing. That's really all you do on the Restoration Shaman at the core of it, is you decide single target or multi-target, and then you kind of just work into that flow from there. You've got your couple of powerful abilities with your Spirit Link Totem, your Earth Elemental, and your Healing Tide Totem, but you've got a lot of automated healing built into Riptide, Healing Rain, and Healing Stream Totem, so because of that, you might be in a fairly good situation with your party, and that's where you start to do your damage dealing rotation, or you start to do things like drop your Capacitator Totem, use your Wind Shear to do some interrupts, learn Wind Tremor Totem and Purge make the most sense to use, or take a look at Purify Spirit and figure out when you can use that. So working all that stuff in together once you have the core is going to add a little complexity to what you're doing as a shaman. So don't look at that core rotation and think, oh, this is boring. You can also spice a lot of this up via talents as well. So what we're going to do next is we're going to take a look at a passive talent build that is going to benefit what we're doing here without adding more complexity. And then later on, once you have the core rotation down and you have kind of worked in some of these utility options, then you can go in and make an even better talent build that will add some more complexity and give you some more options. All right, this is the passive talent build that we're going to be using for the Restoration Shaman. What we're going to do now is go through each of these talents, talk about what they do, and how they affect the core rotation that we just went over. So our first talent is Torrent. This increases the initial heal from Riptide by 30%. Pretty simple, pretty straightforward. Your Riptide, which you want to use all the time, now heals 30% more on that initial heal. This is going to make it even stronger for a quick instant cast burst heal that you can use. Next, we have Echo of the Elements. This says Riptide, Healing Stream Totem, and Lava Burst now have 2 charges. Effects that reset their remaining cooldown will instead grant 1 charge. So with Riptide, which we want to use all the time, our Healing Stream Totem, which we have here, and also our Lava Burst now have 2 charges. So this is fantastic because we can Riptide onto 2 targets. We can immediately get 2 stacks of Tidal Waves to use on our next Healing Surge or Healing Wave. We also have Healing Stream Totem now that we can use basically every fight because we drop it. It lasts for 15 seconds. It has a 30-second recharge time. So by the time we get around to this one being charged up, we could have dropped another one. So we can basically, every fight you can throw out a Healing Stream Totem now with this. And then also with our Lava Burst, we can Flame Shock, Lava Burst twice for big crits. And then we have more opportunity to get the procs from our Lava Surge passive as well. So all around, this just gives us more of the things that we really want and lets us use them more often. Next, we have Spirit Wolf. This says, while transformed into a Ghost Wolf, you gain 5% increased movement speed and 5% damage reduction every 1 second, stacking up to 4 times. This is just a cool utility talent that you can pick up. Honestly, you can grab anything that you want on this row. I like this one because if you need to run away, you're getting damage reduction. And usually if you need to run away, it's because you're taking damage. So reducing that damage is great. And you also just get increased movement speed. And this is great whether you're running away from something or you're just traversing through the dungeon. If you don't want to pick up Spirit Wolf and you want to pick up something different instead, I would recommend Static Charge. This reduces the cooldown of Capacitator Totem by 5 seconds for each enemy it stuns, up to a maximum reduction of 20 seconds, which is pretty easy to hit when you're in a dungeon. You're probably going to hit 3 to 5 enemies, which means you're going to get 15 to 20 seconds worth of a reduction on the cooldown on Capacitator Totem. And like I said, this is just a great ability, great utility ability to use in fights. So I would either take Static Charge or Spirit Wolf. I'm partial to Spirit Wolf, and that's why I've chosen it here. Next, we have Ancestral Vigor. It says targets you heal with Healing Wave, Healing Surge, Chain Heal, or Riptide's initial heal gain 10% increased health for 10 seconds. So this is really cool. If you look at my health right now, I have 78,777. If I were to cast Riptide on myself, I now have 86,655. So not only are you going to be healing targets, you're going to be boosting their health and giving them a bigger health pool to work with. And especially when you combine this with things like Chain Heal, that is going to hit a bunch of people all at the same time and boost everybody's health. So this is just in general really good. You're going to be healing the tank a lot, so having basically a constant 10% increased health pool for the tank is going to be fantastic, and this just gives you a little more wiggle room to work with when it comes to your heals. Next, we have Nature's Guardian. This says when your health is brought below 35%, you instantly heal for 20% of your maximum health. This cannot occur more than once every 45 seconds. So something that happens a lot when you're new as a healer is you want to do your job really well, and you're really focused on making sure the tank stays alive and keeping your party members topped up, and all of a sudden your screen is flashing red and you're almost about to die. That will probably happen a lot to you when you're first getting started on trying to heal, and Nature's Guardian is a good way to kind of relieve some of that panic. So you'll see the screen maybe flash red or something, but you'll instantly get this 20% heal and you'll go, okay, I need to heal myself. Let me step off for a moment. Let me get a healing surge on myself or a riptide on myself and then get back to what I was doing. So I think when you're starting out, this is really good. This is also really good for difficult content. But if you feel like you've kind of like graduated beyond this, feel free to pick something else on the row. Next, we have Flash Flood. So this says when you consume tidal waves, the cast time of your next heal is reduced by 20%. So this is going to add more to what we're doing with tidal waves already. So if we were to cast Riptide on ourselves, we now have tidal waves, and then we can consume that, let's say with our healing wave. Boom. Now what we have is we have Flash Flood. The cast time of our next heal is reduced by 20%. So we could use this on our healing surge for a 1.1 second healing surge cast instead of a 1.3. Now the thing to keep in mind here is that Flash Flood, unlike tidal waves, does not stack. So if I were to Riptide into Chained Heal, and this is going to give me my 2 stacks of tidal waves, and then I cast Healing Wave plus Healing Wave. As you can see, I do not have 2 stacks of Flash Flood. I just have the single one. So you kind of want to avoid doing that when you pick up this talent. Instead, what you want to do is you want to make sure that you cast Riptide or Chain Heal or whatever you want here to get your stacks of tidal waves. And then once you've done that, you consume one of your stacks of tidal waves, then use something like another Chain Heal with that faster cast, then consume your other stack of tidal waves and use that Flash Flood on something else there. So it's a little bit of complexity added in there. In all honesty, you don't need to think about it too much because generally speaking, it's just going to make your heals faster, even if you're not really paying that much attention to it. If you're focused on the core aspect of just getting tidal waves up and then consuming it, then whatever you cast next is going to cast faster because of Flash Flood. You don't really have to pay that much attention to it. So overall, this is just a beneficial thing that you can do that doesn't require you to put a lot of thought into it. But if you want to kind of min-max and get nitpicky with it, you can. And then our final passive here is High Tide. It says every 40,000 mana you spend brings a high tide, making your next 2 chain heals heal for an additional 20% and not reduce with each jump. So this is super awesome. And you kind of saw this effect a little bit earlier, but we're going to do it again. We're going to build up to spending this 40,000 mana. We're just going to spend it however we can, not casting Chain Heal. That's the only thing we don't really want to cast here. And you're going to see this little blue, there it is, this little blue marker over your head. So this is your indicator that a high tide has come. And now your Chain Heal is going to heal 20% more than it normally does. And even more importantly, it's not going to reduce on each jump. So when you cast that Chain Heal, everyone's going to get healed for the same amount, and that amount is going to be 20% higher than normal. So this is really awesome. You just need to pay attention to when you get that blue marker above your head, and when you do, know, hey, I've got a really powerful Chain Heal that I can cast. And as long as you cast them quickly, your next 2 Chain Heals are going to do that, not just 1. So in my case here, I waited a little bit too long and I only got the 1 Chain Heal off. But this is a huge help for AoE healing in situations like that. So if you are in a situation where people's health is starting to get a little bit touchy, you can kind of hit some spot heals here and there, wait for that blue icon to show up above your head, and then hit them with that big Chain Heal and probably top everybody off. So just a great talent to have. And that's it. That's the talent build that we're going to be using as we practice playing on the Restoration Shaman. Like I said, this isn't the best talent build, but this is the talent build that adds the least amount of extra skills and complexity on top of everything that you're already doing, while also still being a pretty good talent build. So practice it, and when you feel like you have a good handle on it, change it up. All right, that's it for the guide. I hope that you have learned something that's going to help you heal on a Restoration Shaman. If you liked the video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up. Subscribe to my channel if you want to be notified of when I make more videos like this. And if you've been helped in any way by any of my videos, please consider supporting the channel on patreon.com/Setsuko for even more content. In the case of class guides, additional content includes more talent builds with examples of how they affect the core rotation, dungeon run live streams, and VODs where you can watch me play as a Restoration Shaman and explain what I'm doing as I go, and also add-on tips and information, including a week or setup for the Restoration Shaman. I want to thank everyone for watching my videos and supporting my channel in whatever way you've been able to so far. I hope you're having fun in whatever it is that you're doing, and as always, I'll see you on the next video.